We are very excited for the show, and we'll start first with a guest, Dimitris Lascarys. Some of you will have seen him on Rania Khalek's Dispatches last week. He was in Iran, visited the Strait of Hormuz. He's a lawyer and a journalist. Welcome, Dimitri, to the show today.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
Well, we'll ask you about where you are right now later, but first, you were just in Iran. You've been following, of course, what's happened since this announcement by Trump on Tuesday night about the ceasefire and everything that has transpired since. So we wanted to start off first asking you, what is your assessment of what has happened since? There's been a lot of back and forth from members of the Trump administration. Of course, Iran has responded in kind. So what do you make of this?
I'll do the best that I can. It's rather chaotic, and there's conflicting signals coming out of various arms of the U.S. government. But I always start from the premise that you are what your record says you are, and Donald Trump is a pathological, treacherous, perfidious liar. So I would be operating on the assumption that this is some kind of a ruse. Maybe it's designed to calm the markets down temporarily, give them a breathing space to organize some kind of a land operation, some kind of special op, restock their munitions. Another thought that occurred to me is that it may be that the Israeli military, which was having, as far as I could tell, its ass handed to it by the Lebanese resistance, wanted to be able to focus for at least some period of time exclusively on Hezbollah. And that the Americans and the Israelis are doing this to induce them to stop firing at Israel while they focus their ire and cruelty on Lebanon. And, the way they've behaved over the last 48 hours would lend some support to that interpretation. However, I don't exclude the possibility that out of desperation, Donald Trump really is finally coming to the realization that he is going to have to make material concessions to the Islamic Republic in order to bring this catastrophic war to an end. I've always been of the view that eventually that will happen, but I expected it was going to take considerably longer, and that the global economy, particularly the U.S. economy, we're going to have to experience a lot more pain before the Donald finally did the sensible thing.
Yeah, well, you were
So I'm
just
skeptical.
Yeah, rightly so. You were just in Tehran. You were just visiting different parts of Iran, and you saw, again, as you talked about on Rania's episode, the devastation.
Sorry, guys, I froze. Sorry, I'm back. I don't know. Sorry, mountain. Oh yeah, internet. What are you gonna do?
Well, there you go.
Sorry, I interrupted. Go, please keep going. I'm sorry. Had to interject
you're
and remind you
fine.
I'm here. I couldn't hear. Anyways.
Well, that's here we are dealing with an active war zone, one person there, one person going there. So, that's what you get at Breakthrough News. It's nothing but the real news, and brought to you by the people who really know what's happening. But, that being said, you were in Iran talking to Iranian people, amid this war. You listened to people, heard what the sentiment on the streets was. What is your sense of how the Iranian people are interpreting the ceasefire agreement? What has been the response you've heard from your contacts on the ground?
For me, a really formative moment in my time, my 11 days in Iran, was seeing all of the pro-government demonstrations and how often I heard people chant against negotiations. And there was one particular placard that stands out for me, and that was a woman holding up a sign that said, "No negotiations between the angels of Minab and the demons of Epstein." And I think that nicely encapsulates the way the vast majority of the Iranian people feel. The thing is that when Donald Trump comes out and says that he finds this 10-point plan, which would constitute an absolutely amazing victory for Iran over the American empire and its rabid Israeli attack dog, it's really hard for the Iranian government to say, we're not going to sit down at the table and at least see where this leads. That is just the mere fact that he said this and he put it in writing, it is in and of itself pretty tantalizing. And I think it would have been, frankly, irresponsible for the Iranian government not to at least take a little bit of time. 2 weeks seems to me like a reasonable period, and see if this is just another fraud while keeping, as they say, their finger on the trigger. I think their finger is most decidedly on the trigger, and they may be pulling that trigger tonight if they haven't already done so because of Israel's attacks on Lebanon. I think they're absolutely determined to ensure that this ceasefire, if it does take effect, extends to Lebanon. I would be shocked if they cut Lebanon loose and left it to its own devices after Lebanese resistance entered the war and really assisted greatly the war effort by pounding Israel senseless from the north. I mean, it would be really a terrible betrayal. I just don't see that happening. And because this 10-point plan, even if half of it is adopted, just half of it, let's suppose, for example, they say, okay, we're not leaving the military bases, but we're going to lift the sanctions and we're going to pay reparations. And you can maintain control over the Strait of Hormuz and exact tolls on ships that pass through. Just that alone would cause Iran to become, in my view, the undisputed power in the region. It already is arguably the most powerful state within the region, except for the fact that it doesn't have nukes. But if it were to be allowed to develop its economy freely and also be able to gain reparations and huge amounts of revenue by exacting tolls on ships going through the Strait of Hormuz, Israel would be isolated, weak, vulnerable, and they're going to do everything imaginable to prevent this thing from becoming a reality. They're going, if you thought that they were prone to violate ceasefires before, I mean, this is maximal incentive for them to trash this deal. But the problem I think that they're trying to, my sense is that they're trying to navigate is that people are already extremely upset with Israel across the globe. A poll just came out which showed that 60% of Americans have an unfavorable view of Israel, which is quite remarkable given the level of pro-Israel propaganda there. And they want to tank this deal without seeming to be responsible for the destruction of the deal. They want to be able to say plausibly with their, their co-conspirators in the corporate media, this is all Iran's fault. So I think that's part of the reason why they're trying to peel off Lebanon and stop attacking Iran directly, because it's a little bit easier for them to say if Iran retaliates to the attacks on Lebanon, it's a little bit easier for them to say, well, we didn't attack Iran, they attacked us, therefore we're going to continue the war. But again, this is so difficult to interpret what's going on. And last thing I want to say is I think that the messages coming out of the White House are chaotic. I think that there's this statement that they found this 10-point plan to be workable, just even if it's a lie, must be generating tremendous amounts of angst in the neoconservative community in the United States and in the Pentagon.
I am curious, Dimitri. I kind of, before we ask you about, your upcoming trip, I want to know your thoughts on what happened in Lebanon yesterday. It was, I think, one of the darkest days in Lebanon's history. I was there to experience it, and it was the most terrified I've ever been in my entire life. And what struck me is I was getting a lot of messages from friends checking in on me, and one of them in particular, I had responded about how scary it was, and he told me, I was there in July of 1981 when they did strikes in the center of Beirut, just like yesterday, and they killed 400 people. And all I could think was, my God, generation after generation, like this is all they do. This is all they do. But yeah, I'm just curious your thoughts.
Well, my understanding is Israel has always had a history of going hog wild in the final minutes before a ceasefire is supposed to take effect. They do that consistently, but this was on a scale. You're right, Rania. Wow. I mean, the level of depravity that we saw in the last 24 hours surpasses even the standards of cruelty to which we become accustomed with Israel. All I can say is I think that they've really taken a beating from Hezbollah, and they're trying to sort of recover some political capital with their own constituents in Israel by being particularly sadistic and cruel. And I do think that this was primarily intended to provoke a reaction from Iran so that there would be no serious negotiation over the 10-point peace plan. But now that Iran didn't take the bait, it appears, not immediately. So I think they're in a bit of a quandary because there was quite a negative reaction from leaders in the West to what they did to Lebanon over the past 24 hours. Whether it was sincere or not is another matter, but at least rhetorically, a lot of countries came out and said, this is even Kaja Kallas was like, no, this is absolutely unacceptable what you're doing. You have a right to defend yourself, blah, blah, blah. But, you can't conduct yourself in this way in Lebanon. So I think the quandary now is how do we get Iran to, come after us, destroy any negotiations without seeming to be responsible. So I think what they're probably going to do is they're going to dial down the cruelty a notch in Lebanon. But I'd be shocked if they stop attacking Lebanon. I think they're going to continue, and if that doesn't work in bringing an end to the negotiations, they'll find some other way to stop them. And it all will come down at the end of the day to whether Donald Trump is finally going to exercise the leverage he has over the Israeli government to rein them in. I'm skeptical, but he has the leverage. He has the power to rein them in.
Yeah.
Well, just so everybody knows, this is sorry, before you go to your next question, Zoe, I just wanted to know this is pretty breaking news. That's actually quite shocking. I assume this is Washington's doing, but Netanyahu has released a statement saying, in light of Lebanon's repeated request to open direct negotiations with Israel, I instructed the cabinet yesterday to start negotiations with Lebanon as soon as possible. And according to Axios, that means that next week, according to a senior Israeli officials, the first meeting will take place at the State Department in Washington. The U.S. side will be led by Ambassador to Lebanon, Mishaal Issa. This is a man of Lebanese descent who loves Israel. That's on the U.S. side. Israel will be represented by the ambassador to Washington, Yakael later. I don't know. That's a name I don't know or can't pronounce. Don't feel bad about that. And then the Lebanese side will be represented by the ambassador, the Lebanese ambassador to Washington, Neda Hamedi Mouawed. And this is a very Zionist woman. I mean, she's from what I've heard about her from people who work with her or work around her, is that she is very close to people like Morgan Ortagus. That's a very good friend of hers. Morgan Ortagus was Trump's initial I guess, official on the Lebanon file when his administration started. And she's just a right-wing horrible person. And she's also very good friends with a woman called Hanin Ghaddad, who is a Lebanese American woman from the south of Lebanon, actually, who works for the Israeli lobbying group Washington Institute for Near East Policy, and is basically like everybody in her village hates her. And she's from a village called Ghaziye in South Lebanon, and half of Ghaziye is from the Ghaddad family. And they all have basically disowned her because they see her as a traitor, because all she does is advocate for Lebanon to be bombed and for Lebanon to serve Israel's interests. Anyway, sorry, I'm very angry about this development because I think it's outrageous to negotiate with people who are massacring you. That's insane. Like Israel's not going to even cease fire. And you want to go make peace with them? Also, this government is completely irrelevant because they don't care that Israel's invading. All they want to do is destroy Hezbollah because that's their domestic political opponent. And they can only do it through Israel's force. And even then, I don't think they can do it. Sorry, there's my rant. Dimitri, your thoughts?
Oh, I would be just as disgusted as you. I'm disgusted, and I'm not even in Lebanon. So I have nothing but contempt and derision for this so-called government in Beirut. Doing absolutely nothing during the 14 months of depravity that Israel inflicted on this country, this devastated country after the so-called ceasefire into effect. I mean, it was pathetic. But a couple of weeks ago, the IDF said they admitted that they weren't going to be able to disarm Hezbollah. And they did everything imaginable to intimidate this pathetic government into disarming Hezbollah, and it didn't even try. So what is this negotiation going to accomplish? It just strikes me as kabuki theater. I can't imagine what agreement Netanyahu might secure from this government that could be implemented and satisfy his demands, which are basically that Lebanon surrender all ability to defend itself from Israeli aggression. Hezbollah is not going to play ball, and they've admitted the IDF they can't do it. Is Aoun going to send the military in to do it, Lebanese army? I don't think so. So it's hard for me to imagine what could possibly come of this kabuki theater negotiation.
Well, Dimitri, as people may be able to tell by your background, you're currently at the airport. And as you've told us, you're on your way to Lebanon. Obviously, it's really dangerous right now. You've been there before. Why are you headed there, and what are you kind of expecting to encounter there?
I've been to Lebanon 4 times since the genocide began, and I just feel, first of all, a strong bond to the people because of the extraordinary resistance that they have mounted. But at this particular moment, because of this ceasefire, sort of the eye of the storm has shifted from Iran to Lebanon. And this seems to me to be the place to be if you want to cover this war and try to understand the trajectory it is now on. I think that's the place to be. So I'm supposed to be coming in this evening on a flight from Cyprus. I'm in an airport in Cyprus, but a friend of mine a few minutes ago sent me a map, which apparently was published by the Israeli military in the last few hours, which shows an area surrounding the airport in Beirut that it is threatening to bomb tonight. And it literally, this large area of southern Beirut borders right on the airport. So I don't know. I mean, as far as I know, the flight is going to be taking off, but I hope it's not canceled, and I'll be able to come in and see what's happening on the ground.
Well, we'll definitely be following your coverage, Dimitri, and be safe, of course. And thank you so much for joining us today on the Freedom Side.
Thank you, and keep up the great work. You guys are fantastic.